Welcome to How Do They Afford That, the podcast that peeks into the financial lives of everyday Australians. I'm Michael Thompson. I'm a writer and the co-host of the podcast Fear and Greed Business News. As always, I am joined in the studio by Canna Campbell, financial planner, founder of Sugar Mama TV, the financial literacy platform that you'll find on Instagram and Threads and TikTok and podcasts and books and YouTube and all over the place, really. Hello, Canna.
Good morning. How are you?
I am going well. We've got a serious topic today. It's quite a serious one. We received an email from a listener, and I'm not going to identify them. They've asked not to be identified, but I'm going to read the email and then let's jump into it. So what he says, how do you help and support your parents and in-laws who are not financially well off? He says, my partner and I are in our 30s. We are financially savvy and we're on track for some great returns over the next few years. However, my mother-in-law is 70 and painfully unsavvy when it comes to money. She doesn't own any property, has a tiny super balance. She was a single mum with a lot of time spent out of the workforce and has no assets other than a few $100,000 sitting around in cash. She relies on the government pension for her daily expenses. He says, I find the situation so dire that I don't even know how to begin a constructive conversation. And as much as I like her, the thought of her potentially having to live with us in a few years makes me panic. What can be done? There is a lot in this, Canna. It is a real dilemma and one that we are going to explore today. I'm guessing this is probably a relatively common scenario.
It is. You are right. So the Grattan Institute in May 2024 actually released a report, and they stated that almost half of retirees, 50%, who rent are actually living in poverty, and it's only getting worse. But this is the thing, it's actually not just retirees. According to the Grattan Institute and ABC News and the Australian National University, it's actually 50% of people who are renting are also in serious financial stress.
Okay, so it is a pretty broad.
Very broad. It's not just pigeonholed to retirees.
Okay, so assuming for the sake of this, that we are looking really at an older generation here and dealing particularly with this listener's question, is the first thing for this listener to do to have a conversation with his mother-in-law? And I suppose the big question here is, how on earth do you do that in a way that is not going to cause a great deal of distress, a great deal of angst, and potentially a fracture within the family?
Look, can we just take a moment to step back from this situation and just show some compassion? You know, my compassion immediately goes to this listener. Yeah. You know, it is such a frustrating situation because the world is very expensive right now. It's challenging, it's hard, and clearly this listener is driven. They're educating themselves, they're working on financial goals, they're taking their money seriously and doing, being diligent and proactive and responsible with their money. And that's really admirable. And so I feel for this person because there they are trying so hard, working so hard, facing all the challenges that we face today. And then you've got this family member that you've inherited, so to speak, that you then have to now take responsibility for, which I think is, I feel for this person. However, I also have a huge amount of compassion for this mother-in-law. As this person mentions, they've been a single mother. They've had large amounts of time, obviously, outside of the workforce. And they haven't probably had access to basic financial literacy and education to actually have the opportunity in order to be able to help themselves create an element of financial well-being and financial independence. So I feel really compassionate for both parties here.
So the first point is, when you're having this conversation, do it from a place of compassion.
Exactly. And also, how lucky for this listener that they can access for free, information about how to invest, how to stick to a budget, why superannuation is so important. So they are very lucky that they've had this available because it probably wasn't available for the mother-in-law's generation.
Okay.
So come from a place, I know it sounds really cheesy, kumbaya, but come from a place of love, care and compassion. But the way I would approach this is to say, with an open heart, we are really worried about you. We want the very best for you. We want to see you being able to go on holidays. We want to see you healthy and strong. We want to see you never struggling for money, but being able to afford those groceries, to be able to go to the theatre, to buy yourself a new pair of shoes. Show that person what you want for them. Because when you approach something like that, it's the guards are down, the boxing gloves are off. We can actually start to, we're talking about a goal, a vision, a dream. And all of a sudden it just shifts the energy into a place where you're not about to be attacked for being potentially or possibly irresponsible or, neglectful or squanderless with your money. It's actually about, I just want the very best for you because I respect you, I honour you, you are a part of our family.
And it's not about the impact that it has on you as a listener. And from this listener's perspective, I mean, of going, we don't want you to live with us or anything along those lines. It is about, this is what we want for you. We know that this is what you would like for yourself as well, because you like to travel, because you like to do this. We want to help you get to this point. That feels like a very compassionate, kind of safe way into the conversation.
It's gentle. It's not about blaming at all. It's about, okay, this is what we want. And that's what we want for everyone. Then I would say to that person, all right, why don't together we go and see someone and get some advice for you so we can help make this happen. We can do the best we can do to get you there.
And it's not too late, is it?
It is never, ever too late.
Okay.
But I will say you need to get and see someone ASAP.
Because 70 years old, I mean, here we would be looking at a situation where, with this listener saying that their mother-in-law has a few $100,000 sitting there in cash. So already they do have an asset there. And this would be a case of going and then talking to someone and going, this is the situation. This is what we want to be able to achieve. And the conversation, I imagine, would be quite similar in terms of what you would do if you were going and seeing a financial planner in your 30s. They would still be talking about your goals and what you want to achieve, isn't it?
And that's the financial planner's job, is to help you get to the destination of your dreams.
Yeah.
And the thing is, when you actually include, a licensed financial planner, it also helps change the seriousness of the conversation because you now have a neutral, independent party involved.
Yeah.
And they can say those confronting things that you would love to scream from the rooftops potentially at your mother-in-law. They'll actually do it and say, okay, because of your asset base you've got, that particular goal or dream may not be achievable in time, or maybe we have to downsize that, but let them deliver that type of news if they need to. But when you see a financial planner in this situation, they're going to assess the situation after they've heard the goals and dreams. And then they're going to apply their knowledge, their experience, their understanding, and all the, various loopholes and tweaks that they can do to the overall wealth and restructure things, and then work with the mother-in-law on budgeting, on cash flow, some goals, understanding the different investments. Don't try and fix your mother-in-law's finances. Put them in the hands of a professional and let them do their thing.
Can I ask, and this is not product advice, this is not specific advice because we don't know anything about this listener beyond what they sent us in the email that I read there. What kind of strategies would be considered for someone that is, say, 70 years old? Because obviously we're dealing with a very different risk profile and very different needs to someone, say, investing in their 30s.
Well, look, it's going to obviously come down to the finer details of whether they're working or not, or whether they would meet a work test. But superannuation would obviously be a conversation in there, in particular the allocated pension, if they can access that.
Okay.
Obviously, looking at things like Centrelink, an age pension, potentially rent assistance. And then they would be talking about, the blend of investments, whether there'd be some shares, whether there'd be some fixed interest, talking about the importance of emergency money, any other Centrelink entitlements. And they would be working on those things immediately. But, and this is why people need to say financial planner, is it's not just the immediate stuff, it's also the long-term stuff. So starting to have those conversations about, well, in due course, what are your thoughts about aged care?
Okay.
Is it a nursing home? And this is a whole other topic in itself. And I have to say, this conversation is also, you want a financial planner that specialises in these particular services and this particular, I guess, field, because it is quite complicated and you really do need to get professional advice from a financial planner. But these are the things that they'd be talking about, and they are very important conversations. And a financial planner can actually really work some incredible magic for people in these situations.
This would not be, as we mentioned at the start, this would be a fairly common kind of scenario. But how, and this is probably a bit tricky, how can you assess the financial health of an elderly family member, especially if they are perhaps a little reluctant to share details, or maybe if they're actually unaware of their own financial situation?
My first bit of advice is don't. If someone is reluctant, don't try and pry information out of them. I mean, to me, that's a form of financial coercion almost.
But what if you're doing it to go, I know that relative X isn't going to have much money, and in a year or two, if they keep spending the way they're going to have nothing, and I want to help them. I need to help them, because otherwise in 2 years, it will be my problem to fix. And I'm using the wrong language here, and it sounds as though but this is probably a situation where people are doing, and you don't want it to be a situation of financial coercion or financial abuse, but you still want to be able to help somebody.
I agree. And that's why you say, let's go see a financial planner together.
Okay.
Come from that place of love. You've got to also respect people's boundaries, though. Yes, you might have strong suspicion that they're running out of money and they're making bad decisions left, right, and centre. But also, you don't really know what is going on behind the bank accounts and the financial situation. So if you're needing to, I guess, obtain information, that is, to me, a sign that you need to get someone involved and respect the boundaries, particularly if they are reluctant, And this is, I guess, where it comes into being very careful of, elders abuse, because if that, we've got to understand that if they don't want to share something, we must understand that. But we still doesn't mean we just go wash our hands of them. But we say, look, I want to make sure that you're okay. I want to make sure that you have a fantastic retirement. I want to make sure that you can always access the best healthcare possible. I don't know anything about your financial situation and I respect your privacy. However, I would love to be able to help make sure that we have an extra peace of mind, because I know that I can only help you to a certain point, potentially further down the track. So let them know of your own limitations as well and where your boundaries are. Together, why don't we go see a financial planner? Or perhaps I make some appointments for you to go see a financial planner. You can't force someone. Like, you can take the horse to the water, but you can't make them drink.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, you can try your hardest, but you've also got to be respectful here as well.
Goodness me, it is a minefield, isn't it? It can be a really difficult path to walk.
But I will say, if someone's refusing to, I think that person has the right to say, look, you've refused to get financial advice. I've voiced my concerns and my fears. Please know that I may not be in a position myself to help you further down the track if the wheels fall off.
Yeah.
I think you then have that responsibility to say, all right, because you're not helping yourself, I will be limited as to how much I can help you.
All right, we're going to take a very quick break. On the other side, I want to talk to you about then how you limit the risk to yourself, to your own financial goals and your own security if you are trying to help somebody else, whether there is a way to kind of quarantine your own financial position so that if there is a problem with an older relative that it doesn't kind of flow over to you. But we'll get to that one in just a moment. Kana, we are talking today about money conversations with aging relatives, and this has come from a listener who has sent us an email really asking the question, how do you help and support your parents and your in-laws who are not financially well off? We talked about the importance of encouraging them to get financial advice, and that may be a case of going with them, taking them to do that, so that the conversation, the difficult parts of that conversation are not being had by you, that it is being had by someone who has professional experience in this space and is going to be able to use the right language and help kind of convey the right message here. And it is not going to cause more family disruption. Can I ask you about emergency money? Because we talk about having emergency money all the time. Should we be setting aside a separate emergency fund in order to support parents, in-laws as well?
Look, every household is different, and, no family is perfect. So, yes, there are going to be situations where you may need to factor that into your emergency money, into your own emergency money. Okay, well, look, we're potentially going to have to pay a deposit, for a nursing home or something like that. Yes. But also, communication is so important.
Yeah.
And not just within the dynamic of, husband and wife, or husband and husband, wife and wife, but also the wider family. Is there a brother or sister that you can also have a conversation with and say, look, we're really worried about your mother and what the quality of life is going to look like when she is well into her retirement, and we're worried about her financial well-being. We're going to put some money aside within our own emergency money just in case. What are your thoughts on this? Are you worried as well? Are you in a financial position where you can also factor this into your own emergency money? Start having those conversations so that there are never any sort of sudden, rude, shocking decisions that need to be made. And that's when things can get really quite nasty. And the other thing I would say is you've got to obviously protect your own financial well-being. You need emergency money for you and your family and, for your own situation. You never want it, you've got to sort of keep a fine balance with things. And I can't give a magical formula or magical instructions as to what to do right now. But yes, it does need to be taken into consideration.
Is there a risk of compromising your own financial goals, your own financial security? How do you support your parents or your in-laws financially without putting yourself at risk? Is it just about maintaining some distance? And is this also then when the role of that financial planner comes in, because they are a neutral third party and it is not you that is kind of putting yourself out there?
Exactly. And also a financial planner is going to think of things from experience and knowledge that you may have not considered before. So yes, there needs to be an agreed boundary, but also that boundary needs to be communicated upfront so that everyone knows where they stand and no one is in a position where they go, well, look, 3 weeks ago or 3 months ago, if this happened, I would have been able to help contribute, but now I can't because I've just bought my first property or, we've just about to have another baby. So that's why having these conversations as a family unit openly is so important.
What about legal considerations here? What should we be kind of aware of when planning for an elderly parent's financial future? Power of attorney, kind of wills. Should this be part of the same conversation? I'm seeing that the common thread here is communication is key.
Yeah, absolutely. You need to get a solicitor involved and a financial planner and potentially, an accountant. And this is particularly important because things like Alzheimer's and dementia, is something that actually may impact the elderly parents' investment decisions. So that has got to be put in place. And also, if there is a situation where one sibling, potentially this couple here, are providing significantly for this mother-in-law, perhaps there's a conversation that goes, okay, well, look, if there's any money left in the estate, it's only fair that some of that money be paid back to that child or adult child or couple before the estate is then divided up. These are the conversations to have so that there's no unnecessary or avoidable tension, but left with the siblings involved.
Yeah, because that can be an awfully disruptive thing, can't it? Particularly after the fact and when kind of assets and wills are being discussed. The more that all of these things can be communicated in advance and discussed while the individual is still with you, it's going to make everything a smoother process. And
money can sometimes bring out the worst in people, so you're never going to regret this and getting things correctly documented and everyone agreeing on it. And there is your boundary. It's in black and white. Now,
you mentioned earlier looking ahead to the future, and this goes back to the listener's email about the fear that their mother-in-law will actually end up living with them in a couple of years' time, and the importance of having those conversations early about future needs, that aged care might not be part of the equation at the moment, but in 5 years' time, it might be. In 10 years' time, it might be. And so have that conversation now. And aged care, of course, can be very expensive.
Can be hard to access too sometimes.
Yeah, and there's a range of different options, and it's designed to still be accessible for people who don't have a lot of money. There is a lot of varying levels of government support depending on what your assets are. But this is where it starts to get complicated.
And this is why you need a financial planner that specialises in this sector.
Yeah, and even a good starting point. I was looking on the Services Australia website at the ageing section on there while I was researching after receiving this email from the listener. And I discovered something called Financial Information Service Officers, which are a part of the Services Australia department. And while I can't provide specific advice for your circumstances, they can talk you through what the options are, and they can talk you through kind of the way that aged care is structured and kind of how the different levels of support are available to you. It might be a good starting point for a conversation.
Absolutely. And can I just say one last thing? You might have a conversation and it may not quite go to plan. However, please don't ever underestimate the power of starting that conversation.
Yeah.
You may have planted a couple of seeds. So it may be lots of little conversations here and there where you pepper that idea into your mother-in-law. Don't think, okay, well, I had a go and it fell on deaf ears and I just give up. Keep going. Take it gentle. Empower her. Make her feel supported. Make her feel heard. Know that she's loved and cared and that you only want the best. Keep trying. Don't just give up and throw the towel in. It may take a while because she's never understood the importance of, being responsible with money or the importance of putting some money aside for her retirement. She hasn't ever known anything like that. So just take it slow and steady and be patient if it's needed.
And I really like kind of where we started this conversation, which is about the fact that it is coming from a compassionate place, but it is showing this person what you want for them. It makes it a really positive thing in that it is about, okay, together we can find a way, or we want to help you find a way to do those things that you want to do. And that may mean bringing in some external help. Most likely will involve bringing in some external help. But by focusing on the positive, on we are going to help you find a way to do the things that you want, then all of a sudden it is different to the conversation of, well, we don't want you to live with us in a couple of years. We need to sort this out now.
Yeah.
Entirely different.
Very different. Teamwork makes the dream work.
Yes, it does.
Sorry, that's really cheesy.
No. You know what? I think it's a good way to finish off. To this listener who wrote to us, I hope we've addressed the issue. It is one of those ones where I don't think there's any easy answer, and there's certainly not a formula that can be applied, but it is the importance of a conversation and the importance of a compassionate conversation and focusing on those positives and using the wisdom, the experience of a financial planner, because it is never too late, and the sooner you do it, the sooner that you can start putting that structure around that is going to help this listener kind of sleep more easily.
Exactly. I feel like this has been like a bit of a Dolly Doctor session.
Dolly Doctor, goodness me. So Dolly Doctor, that was in the Dolly magazine, wasn't it?
And it was about sexual health and development.
It usually
questions,
wasn't it? So it's not quite the same.
But she would answer the questions with the same type of tone.
Goodness me. If anybody wants more information from you, and goodness
Not
me,
medical advice.
Who knows what they're going to come looking for now, but where do they find you?
The best place to get in contact with me is at Instagram. And I have to say thank you so much to this listener for asking this question, and thank you for being brave, because that would have been a little bit nerve-wracking, I think, sending a question like that. So to anyone else that has questions, feel free to send them through and we can break them down and workshop them, brainstorm, and help come up with a solution, just like Dolly Doctor does.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we did for this listener, you can remain completely anonymous as well, and we can change details as required so that nobody will know who you are. And if you want to hear more from me, which is always a possibility, you can hear me every day with Sean Aylmer on Fear and Greed, Australia's best business podcast. Thank you for listening to How Do They Afford That? Remember to hit follow on the podcast And the very best thing you can do is tell somebody else or send them this episode if you think that they might benefit from hearing it, and spread the word about how do they afford that. Thank you for your company. Join us again next week.